We've got a real treat for you today. We've got the Freeswitch Roundtable. We do this every year, and it's always one of the favorite events. We have with us today Anthony Minisale, the founder of Freeswitch and the founder of SignalWire. We have Chris Rienzo, the director of Stack Engineering at SignalWire. We have Giovanni with us, who you heard from earlier. We have Brian West, who puts together this conference. It's one of the great Freeswitch people and is with SignalWire, and is just generally the most fun guy in any room.
It's Sharon that does this.
Sharon deserves a ton of credit too,
Yes.
Obviously, yes. Big thanks to Sharon.
Similar to you.
And I'm Travis Cross. I will be your moderator for this evening. And today we're going to talk about Freeswitch and whatever these guys have for what's gone on with Freeswitch in the last year, what's going on with Freeswitch going forward, and whatever you, the audience, want to talk about and hear about with respect to Freeswitch. So let's start with you, Brian. Tell us about what's gone on in the last year and what you think is important in the for the Freeswitch community to know about.
Well, I've been pretty much deep in helping build the support infrastructure for SignalWire. That includes working with our commercial customers that currently use Freeswitch in various use cases. Writing up the policies and processes. That's what I've been doing all year. So it's challenging. It's something new to me, and I'm really excited about where we're going.
Beautiful. All right, you can pass it down to Michael Jarris, one of the founders of Freeswitch here, and tell us about what do you think is going on with Freeswitch? What should people know about in this audience?
What's going on with Freeswitch? Well, as Tony announced during his keynote, we did release Freeswitch 1.10. That can be easier, absolutely. So we released Freeswitch 1.10 this week, so that's a big Freeswitch release. With that, we added a whole host of new operating system version support, and with a renewed focus on testing, static code analysis, those sorts of stability bits, and a handful of new features as well that people may be interested in. So it's all of those kind of getting regular releases out and stabilizing things have been our big focus for the last year.
Sounds good. Anthony, do you want to add anything? What should people know about here? What do you want them to ask questions about when we get to that?
Really, anything you want to know. We've been putting a lot of work into Freeswitch, and we kind of hit a milestone to where we can cultivate it in new and exciting ways, so that places we had to cut corners before, we can afford to put some more effort into now. And we want to find ways to unite all the Freeswitch in the world into a magical giant network, so that you can get some of that heavy lifting done on the other side and just build your app.
Beautiful. Giovanni, what do you want to add there? I know you've been working on some things.
I think that also for our audience, the important things and the important part is that has been so much confirmed the fidelity to the open source model, and that we have now with this new release a lot of things that we were waiting for so much time and with so much anticipation. So we have the database that is no more in the core, but has been extracted in separate modules. So we will have both Postgres and MariaDB, MySQL, etc. That's very important because now bidirectional replication for Postgres will be end of life in December. And so probably there will be some rush to have some other kind of cluster solution that can be MariaDB cluster, can be Galera, and etc. So this from one side, and from the other side, we have CentOS support that CentOS Red Hat support that has been also demanded a lot from the community. So I think that we can make an applause to the core devs of Freeswitch that made such an effort.
All right, Chris, how about you? And you deal with a lot of people using Freeswitch. What do you think some of the things people have been concerned about, and some of the things that have changed in the last year are?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we've been trying to deal with over the past year have been a lot of knowledge transfer between the core developers and the new members of the engineering staff. We're trying to make it more efficient for us to develop on Freeswitch, to get releases more frequently out to our customers and to the community, and to set things up so that it's going to become easier for the community to be able to contribute back to the project. We're really continuing to look at the process, to get feedback from the community to figure out how we can best work together. I know that over the past year, one of the things that we were able to do, we haven't released it yet, but we were able to finally get GitHub, get Freeswitch up into GitHub again. We're just currently working through how once we open that up back to the community, how the new workflow would work around that to be able to accept pull requests and deal with issues and that sort of thing. But these are the sort of things that we've been working on to really try and just really enrich the community.
Beautiful. And I mean, I know when we talked last year, there was some thinking about how to change the kind of the character of the community model. How has that evolved over the last year, and how does that change with the new round of venture capital coming into SignalWire? What do you see as being any changes to the community interaction, or how that's going to work going forward?
I think the biggest changes happened in the last year would be that we've been able to put significantly more resources into the open source. So I'll take this chance to make a huge shout out to Andre, who's taken over much of the build operations, kind of our release management, things off of my plate. And he's amazing. He's cranking out releases on a regular basis. It's all of our build systems, automated testing, all that build automation he's taken care of. He's cranked out multiple new platforms, couple of which happened in the last 2 weeks that he's gotten out the door. He's putting those resources into the open source has been a huge help for us to be able to just produce regular releases, solid releases, complete.
Speaking of package management, maybe how have things gone with the Debian side? Have we gotten everything upstreamed? Can you just clone it and build it, or what's the current state of package management in Freeswitch?
Current state of package management with 1.10, we have working Buster builds. Buster significantly improved the kind of mismatch between us and Buster and Debian. There was a pretty significant list of packages we had to override in the stretch. Pretty much all of that is gone. We're using upstream packages for everything they already exist in. All of our patches and requests upstream to Debian kind of got handled. So way cleaner this time. I will say Buster is build quality. We have not done significant testing on Buster yet, so we're looking for community feedback on Buster. We would definitely like to move towards it quickly, but we need your feedback.
I think that's the first time ever where we've been able to run on clean Debian with everything upstreamed. We don't override anything currently. We do have additional packages for libs that they don't support, but we don't override anything currently. So that's wonderful. How many people here use Freeswitch for something in their business or personal Life, wow. Okay, all right. So we're going to have a lot of good questions here. All right, so let's look around the audience. Who here wants to ask something? Who here has a burning question that they want to ask the Freeswitch team? All right, in the back, shout it out.
Yeah, just on the builds, just want to give a big kudos, to the build team, to just get it all ready. We've been looking at us for a while, building our own stuff, so it's great to see it. We currently run on Xenio. We're looking to move, this is the big button project, we're looking to move to Bionic. Do you think you'll have any issues when we switch to Bionic?
So first, he wanted to give a shout out to the build team because that was super helpful to him, and he's wondering about builds for Bionic. He's running on Ubuntu.
We have put zero effort into Ubuntu. So I don't know the answer to your question. If it's closer to Buster, it's more likely to be cleaner. We are happy to run repos. I'm looking at the list of the platforms in front of me. We're now, as of 110, Buster, Stretch, Raspbian, CentOS, OS X, Windows.
Windows is cleaned up significantly this year.
Maybe ask how many people would like to see Ubuntu support out of this group.
Who here cares about Ubuntu at all?
So that's
Five.
not, it's some.
Yeah.
All right.
So we would be more than happy to run repos. We have not had a chance to dig into it yet. Some feedback from you guys as far as what you need from us would be super helpful. The bases are in the build system already to build Ubuntu packages. We just haven't spent any energy on it. So can you give us some feedback as far as if packages just build or if you need something, and we'll take a peek and see what we can do?
It might just work.
It might.
It might.
We've been running on Xenio for like years, so it works. At least we use just the audio component.
Yeah.
On outputs, so they do a little bit different, but it works. It works really well.
All right, other questions? All right, in the back.
Do we still compile from source, or is that forbidden now?
Question is about compiling from source. I mean, obviously.
Yes.
You have to do it from source eventually, so it has to work.
If anything, that's gotten better. OS X, we added video support, a bunch of other little things. And with Buster, it should compile in many more places now, newer GCC, those sorts of things all went in with 110.
All right, other questions? What else do you guys have for the team? All right, right here.
Are there any breaking changes in 1.10, or is upgrading going to be free?
Question is about breaking changes in 1.10.
The database one.
The only close to breaking change would be we added modules for database interface. So if you're using core Postgres, it does require a small config change to load the new Postgres core module. That is the only intentional breaking change. I think it's really solid as far as breaking changes. Even from 1.6 up, there's very little. We rarely intentionally break things going backwards. There's a handful of small things from 1.6. Pretty much nothing 1.10 other than the DB interface for Postgres.
All right, other questions? All right, right there.
How much effort do you put into targeting Freeswitch if someone's going to use a secure application and put it directly on the, the public IP? And let's further state that maybe that person has real good OS, like hardening skills themselves, and they've turned off all unnecessary services, and they've kind of locked it down so that only port 5060 is open for voice and all that. Is there any comment upon the level of like security penetration testing, buzz testing, anything like that that you hammer on the external facing IP?
Question is about security. fuzz testing, other security testing that's been done on Freeswitch?
There's like an army of worms that they attack my dev box every day, and they're doing a pretty good job of testing it for me. But inspiring a lot of ways to try and automatically fail to ban them also. But yeah, we do have, there's an upside to the length of how long we've had stuff in production. So we've been running, we dog food our service online and run Freeswitch in the public all the time and monitor it. We have made a couple efforts to intentionally break stuff. That's something that Chris might want to do. He's that kind of guy. He can probably talk about that more.
Yeah, specifically right now, we're focusing on getting all the static analysis clean for everything. So, the simplest ones like, scan build and Coverity, and then we've got a couple others. We're just trying every compiler, and we want to get, and we're just working hard to get everything completely clean so that we can consistently run these things to make sure that any new code that's going in has at least from a static sense is okay. And then, yeah, definitely as far as, fuzzing and poking at the SIP stack, I know that there's got to be, it's been out for a long time, but there's constantly stuff that's being found, and I have definite interest in making sure to get that stuff going too.
How close to clean are we on scan build and Coverity?
I think we're down to about 180 bugs on scan build, and I haven't looked at Coverity yet.
Our dependencies
we're just
are the
going one
challenge
at a
on that
time.
one.
Yeah, I think we're 2/3 plus of the way through the Clang scan build stuff. There was another scanner that we used that found some definite real world overflows and stuff. We overall put 500 or 600 individual fixes in the last few months alone. It's significant work and time has gone into it, and is always going to be an ongoing process.
Yeah, new compilers are great. Every time there's a new one, they find like 100 things.
Yeah, with the Buster, we found a lot.
There was probably 30 or 40 things just to get
That's
busted.
another upside to being cross-platform, because you have all the new versions of Windows compiler, new version of Unix. Between them, they usually find different things. It's always kind of given us a little head start. We would think everything works, then we'll go build it with Windows, and it won't work. And they're like, oh yeah, it shouldn't work. Thanks, Linux.
We have an objection from the audience.
The objection is that, to remind everybody that port 5060 itself is a huge security hole, depending on how well you set up your dial plan. Because if you have not set up your dial plan correctly, or if your registration is not secure, then it's sort of barricading your windows, leaving the front door open. Yep. And so it's extremely important to verify, and if you leave your system out of the system, you leave your port 5060 open long enough, somebody will test it for you within a couple of days and try to make 10 or 15,000 phone calls.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that's...
Yeah, there's a pro tip there. Like, don't run SIP on port 5060. There's no reason to. It's just the default. I would highly recommend picking one different, because that goes a long way, because for some reason the scanner is too lazy to try SIP on other ports. It just gives up when it can't find it on 5060. I'm not giving them any ideas, I hope.
We definitely have production boxes that we run, or dog food boxes that we run that have 5060 open, and the onslaught is non-stop, to the point where we have to fail to ban things just so we can look at logs occasionally when we're having issues. Now, that being said, they do get a pretty good abusing from the scanners, although they're not very creative abuse. They're kind of the same patterns over and over again, just looking for mostly bad dial plan setup, that are exploitable. Yep.
Believe it or not, I have machines that get SIP scanned on non-5060 ports.
Yeah?
I've seen it before too. It's rare.
Not nearly as much as, I mean, he said it within a couple days. It's usually within 20 minutes we start seeing SIP scanners hit a new box. That's normal.
He makes a good point that you have to check your configuration, and your configuration is the first part of security.
Yep.
We had another question over here. Go ahead. The question was the difference between 1.10 and...
SignalWire Stack, it's now called. So yes, the difference is SignalWire Stack is designed for anyone that's running in some kind of production environment that has a high overhead of issues. So where the open source is half volunteer and half our engineers kind of working together. The SignalWire Stack is a smaller group that's a tight knit based on business problems. So the release cycle is a little quicker. And then usually the greatest hits from those changes, which are sometimes business case only things that don't really even help open source, and the ones that are, we cherry pick through, and it comes into open source eventually. So kind of just sidetrack. The open source model is usually, if you're using it for development, you pull any version of it and you're happy and you just play around and you get your stuff prototyped. And if you're running it in production, you want to have somebody instant, bat phone to ask about stuff and being able to get updates immediately when you have some kind of particular problem related to like your business use case. That's where the difference lies.
Sorry, I knew that part because I like to call it. But what 1.10 versus like 2019.5 for the similar stack, are those pretty much the same? Is that 1.10 more like?
They never get 100% the same, but they get closer during those times. Yes, like there's several things that are pulled. It's usually once they've matured inside of the SignalWire Stack is when we push them into open source. They come quicker if they're like emergency kind of things, like there's some weird security hole or an egregious crash. If it's just kind of random temporary add-on feature or something to solve a problem for someone that might have a life cycle where it even gets nixed out of existence, and we pull it back and don't even leave it in the builds. So it's never 100% the same. It usually just runs faster and further ahead.
All right. Other questions? I saw one over here. Go ahead.
Are there any changes related to video conferencing in 1.10?
Fairly significant, although not very significant as far as feature set, mostly related to just stability and edge case bug fixes.
I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat?
Is there significant video changes in 1.10? Performance issues, probably some minor improvements in performance versus the previous release. Nothing major in that.
More about keeping up with changes of spec. Spec slightly differs, or adapting to a new version of libav.
That was in the previous
you get there's another one coming eventually because the MDNS thing is going to break everything in video.
All the candidates with MDNS name, the dot local names.
Those kinds of things.
That's got to come probably in the next 1.10 release. We'll have to get that out.
Yeah, so it's mostly around that kind of thing, cleaning up changes in the expected STP format and stuff, and not too much with the codec is really all the work for performance. So we leave that up to the scientists who make the codecs, and if they improve it, that gets pushed into libav. We update to work with the newer libav, and then we inherit those things. So it's possible. We haven't really put any stress test on it, but 1.10 on Buster is basically like newest accepted version of libav, which has got like major API changes, so there's a good chance it could work better. They usually work pretty hard over there.
The one patch I can think specifically will have a little bit of improvement in a very specific case is the one for detecting when video's ready that we dealt with a few weeks ago. That'll have video sync up slightly faster on transcoded calls. So just, like I said, little bits in there that can make a difference. That was
All right,
one you were
Chris.
asking about.
Chris, I've got a question for you. So it wasn't that long ago that about 2/3 or 3/4 of all the commits going into Freeswitch were from Anthony. So I assume that over the last year or two that has evened out a bit. What have you been doing to, what have you had to do to kind of shift the engineering burden of Freeswitch?
Well, I mean, I guess it just happens because we have plenty of things that need to get built, and we just got new people to kind of pick up the slack. We go and pick Tony's brain about anything that we're kind of stumped on. He's got knowledge of things from just an endless source of knowledge about anything that's buried inside of Freeswitch, and so it's worked pretty well. I mean, if we look at the commit history, we'll see a lot more commits coming from Mike over the past year. Some commits from me, some commits from Andre, all the rest of the team. Yeah, it's
Andre, Dragos,
Yeah.
Lee, Seven, Mariah. Yeah, a whole team of people splitting up all these changes, and more stuff from the outside too. We can give outside patches better attention now, and getting better substantive patches from the outside as well.
And sometimes I just give them the diff file and let them commit it because I'm nice. I already have enough commits.
It definitely happens.
Code review with Anthony. We have a question way in the back there. Go ahead.
So, yesterday, the day before, there was some talk about Quick and some of the new initiatives,
Yes.
standards standpoint, and they were, as I recall, it was they were kind of jokingly saying, Tony, you're going to start writing some code to put a sample module together. I mean, is that just a joke, or is he serious? Are you thinking about any of this new, putting a new mod Quick together?
The question is about Quick, whether there will be a mod Quick.
Well, RIP in particular, yes, I was invited to co-author the RFC for it, and I'm in the stage of reading it 5-6 times more and providing feedback. There's another step of defining the spec to happen, but I feel that if there's some traction on it, that we will put effort into implementing the reference version of it as a module in Freeswitch, yes.
All right, other questions? Was there one over here? Did I see a hand? Yes, go ahead.
Other than virtualization, what other issues have you had with growth, like in terms of number of accounts or calls?
This question is about scaling. What issues have they had other than virtualizing the platform like Evan talked about in his talk?
For us, scaling?
Mm-hmm.
No, not really. I mean, we sort of had this kind of track in mind all along, so we're kind of going back and finding some of the loose ends that we had built meant to be connected in this way. We hit a little bit of speed bump along the way, learning how to master running in virtual environments, but we don't really. Our goal is to make Freeswitch as bulletproof as possible to scale to match the environment it was put in, and then from there to not even push it that hard by using horizontal scaling on top of it all. So now you have bulletproof Freeswitch that's only put at like 1/10 of the load that it would even explode at. So, surviving anything actually even works better when you don't try and push it to the limits. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It kind of sounds a little weird, but we like to solve problems that way. Whenever we find a bug or something, we push the fix as far down as we can. So there's a bug. Well, we could have fixed it up here, but we go down there and fix it, and then we fix it again right the next step above that, and then we fix it the next step above that, and then we fix the superficial version too. Because it's like, oh, this shouldn't have ever happened in the first place. We'll just not allow that input to make it into that deeper in the code, but we like to go deep, so. Same with our external architecture. We make sure that it can survive a nuclear holocaust, but then we keep it in kind of a happy, steady rhythm.
Speaking about scaling, can you talk about how you scaled Freeswitch out horizontally? Because one approach is what the 2600 guys did years ago is they built a big superstructure over top of Freeswitch and other components, built this big Erlang system, and then used components like Freeswitch as kind of dumb media proxies to do various things. And it seems like you guys have taken a different approach. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you build up Freeswitch to work in this horizontal environment.
Yeah. So basically, think about it. Freeswitch lives in a burden of having to work anywhere, because that was one of our design goals that we committed to from the beginning. So you run Freeswitch on a Raspberry Pi, you can kill the Raspberry Pi at some point. You run it on a 50-core Xeon, it'll try and scale up and work to that degree. So, but we also had two things like, if there's no database, now we need to use SQLite. And we always try and like adapt to whatever environment we're in. So that is a pain. You know, we've been doing it forever. Like, we're always working on thinking about how can we just make it so ambiguous that it'll always work no matter what the conditions are, which isn't ideal. So when we scale it with SignalWire, we do a different thing. We actually can create our environment the way we want. So we have some very particular ways of doing things that don't make sense to the rest of the world, that we can connect Freeswitch in the back end and allow it to scale horizontally. So because of those, not having to conform to those kind of requirements that open source pulls you off on, we can make very calculated and specific back-end features that allow a Docker and Swarm deployment to actually scale. And that's kind of like what the secret is, because if you're just trying to make software that'll just magically scale by itself, you just turn it on, like, that's way too much of a challenge. We'll never get there. So what we're trying to do is actually make it stable so everyone else has, you know, if they want to actually scale to some crazy amount like that, it must be because they're doing it for good reason, like some kind of a business or it's an important effort. So it's worth something to somebody. So they're going to want our help. So you can have Freeswitch work well by itself, and if you want to have an endless scaling backend, you can actually couple it together. So you like open source, use Freeswitch, add it as a node on our network, and let SignalWire do some of the heavy lifting on the stuff that doesn't really matter so much, and last mile into your Freeswitch as your final app. And if you don't like that, if you give us a little while, we'll be back here in a year, maybe two, talking about how you don't even need to use Freeswitch on your side anymore. You write simple code that like a high school graduate could have written that will do all the same stuff, and all you got to worry about is Dockerizing your little Ruby script. So that's kind of where we want to take things, so that we make everyone happy, because all of the people that we work with now love tinkering with code and digging into C, but there's a lot of people that don't. They just want to write like Node.js app and look in amazement as a little small app is able to command and scale to 1 million instances and stuff like that. So we're really thinking about hyperscale. You can't make some magical software that you just turn on and hyperscale to let everybody in the country make a call at the same time or that kind of crazy stuff. So that's where the difference lies in how we do our scaling.
That makes sense. Maybe we could talk about a different kind of scaling. When you started SignalWire, you were in the fortunate position of having already cultivated this relationship with all these great engineers who had been working on Freeswitch and related projects, and you were able to bring many of them into the organization and scale initially that way. But now raising money, I assume you're going to have to kind of go beyond that core group. Maybe you could talk about your plan for scaling your hiring and you know, how you're going to educate more people on the deep back
I think
end
some of our
Freeswitch.
best engineers are probably in the audience right now, and they just haven't
They don't
realized
know
that
yet that they want to work for SignalWire.
Yeah.
Yes, we're hiring.
I think that, yeah, we have that. That's going to be great. And I think one of our challenges is that we have new skill sets now. Because, you know, original Freeswitch was just an open source project. We did a couple consulting things on the side that would keep me, Brian, and Mike happy, but it's hard to bring on a big team. And when you start doing some of these more complicated challenges, the skill set expands. It's not just C coders. You know, we need like people that do JavaScript stuff and UI and Ruby on Rails, and just keeps going. Like mobile apps. We have all kinds of great stuff now that we can develop in. So yeah, that's how we're thinking about it. We still like to find people. The interesting way we've always found people is like not necessarily going out and putting a Indeed.com job offer and then they come and like, we like to find the people, you know, Ocean's 11 style, where we just, you know, like come and get them and say, come on, it's time. And they're like, yeah, let's go. That's how we found a lot of our guys and girls.
Beautiful. Well, you know, a couple years ago, I gave a talk about how to raise venture capital for your project. And one of the things I say in such a talk is, when you raise, you're committing to this roller coaster where you're either going to be huge or it's going to die. So what was the kind of emotional experience of deciding to raise venture capital and deciding that you wanted this thing to be a $1 billion company, because that's what you got to promise to the venture capitalists to raise the money?
Let me make sure the ink is dry in the check. No, actually, that was something that was like, it has to be done. It wasn't really like, do I want to do this or not? Because it's the whole point of everything we've done up till now. It's like, if we want to get to the next level, we need help. And we can't do it with 3 guys or 4 guys. We're going to end up having 1,000 at some point, you know, to pull off some of the stuff we want to do. And getting big is really the only way to do it. And so it's not about like, I want to be rich now or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, I want to keep all my friends and everybody that I really respect, like in my inner circle, and actually making something out of the stuff that we've been, you know, I think we've been working on this for you know, it's the 15th ClueCon. Freeswitch started in the second one. So, you know, 14 years of Freeswitch. And that's not just Freeswitch. You know, we've got all these other great open source projects out here that are here now. And it's all kind of one big telecom community. They put a lot of effort into this stuff. And I think that some of them are pretty proud, because we are too. You look at all these crazy companies that are growing now that are kind of taking that technology, and we just feel that some of them actually don't know how to work it as well as they could. And that it's kind of, if we really want to make an impact on all the work we've done so far, we bring all you guys together, and we make something that will leave a mark on how communication works, and hopefully change some stuff so we're not stuck in the same paradigm forever. That had been the whole reason we made Freeswitch, was to bring down crazy big iron machines that cost like phone service. It's like 25 cents a minute, you know. So I think we closed chapter 1 and we pulled it off. So chapter 2 is to now give the mainstream world access to the stuff that we all take for granted.
So are there I'm sure everyone here is rooting for SignalWire and for you on this. Are there ways that people in the audience can help? They can test FreeSwitch. They can come work for SignalWire. What else can people do to help you along on this mission?
They can come visit us in our community. We kind of finally made the leap to Slack, because IRC is great, but we're really getting sick of having 3 different devices and never knowing if someone was messaging us or not. And you know, Slack pulls that off amazing. You can just have a conversation, you're on your computer, and then you just grab your cell phone and walk away, and you can continue it, and all kinds of great stuff like that. And it houses the people well and gives them accounts. And you know, we got like 2,000 people in there already. We just launched it in the beginning of the year, so that's a great place to come and hang out, and kind of help on things, just playing around. We get the feedback is amazing to us, and even just using SignalWire to see if it sucks or not. You know, try it, yell at us if it doesn't work. It's not really super expensive, you know, it's the design. We're trying to find the line of cost affordable so that all these other expenses you have to pay for are eliminated, you know. So yes, you're paying us money, but you're paying less money for everything, which is a big difference. So it's not expensive to try it out because it comes with free credit.
Looked like you had something to add there, Mike.
On the helping out across the board, yeah, I mean, both SignalWire and Freeswitch just participate. You know, if you're out there, you know, use our APIs, see how they work, give us some feedback, tell us what you want to see. We're extremely responsive to what people want to see in the APIs as far as what new features are coming out next. You know, Chris and I were talking to a bunch of people, got a lot of feedback of the kind of features people want. That'll feedback through product, and you know, those are the kind of features that will get bumped up in priority based on what people say.
Tell us about some of those. What's the feedback you're hearing? What are the top features that people are? I mean, Freeswitch does a ton of things these days. So what? It kind of feels like once you have all these things in this pile, what is the next marble that somebody wants to add? What are you guys hearing?
I can better comment on like the things that just came out that people were clamoring for. Like the thing I've noticed is everyone seems to be using the Ruby API. So obviously that needs to get some key focus from us, make sure that's rock solid. The other things that we just rolled new messaging API, faxing, answering machine detection, all of which we had major pushes, people asking for. So those are huge. Which ones are next? Are we admitting any of that publicly yet, or are we waiting until they come out? Probably we wait until those come out. We are rolling features at an insane rate, so stay tuned.
Yeah, well, one thing that we can share is we started to make a commitment to trying to destroy robocallers because we all hate them, right? So Freeswitch is working on an open source shake and stir library that we will use inside Freeswitch, and it will be hosted on our SignalWire GitHub.
You know, I was talking with somebody here who has a bunch of inbound phone numbers and actually does a, Shazam style detection to detect robocallers so that they can be reported. You know, that would be a sort of feature that would be interesting if more people ran that sort of thing and there were a collaborative system for reporting, for detecting and reporting robocalling.
Yes. Well, any way they stop robocalling, we will employ them all.
There you
hate
go.
robocalling.
Other questions? Have we inspired any questions here? Have we inspired anybody? Go ahead over on the side.
Is Slack definitive place for support? No, Slack is a good place to come and hang out for support, depending on what kind of support you're looking for. So if it's like open source support, we have good old Jira that we have. We might try and migrate that to GitHub because we'd like to get rid of some of that infrastructure that we have to host for no reason. But we also have like our commercial customers, we have a ticket system. In Slack, sometimes you can get support that way too, depending, like SignalWire Stack customers actually have some dedicated resources that they get over Slack, but there's general public channels for all things. There's a ClueCon one in there. You guys could talk about this conference all year long. We give updates on when the timeline is coming closer and who's speaking and all that kind of stuff. We have one just for Freeswitch. And it's tied together with the link to our IRC channel because we didn't want to give up on IRC, so we gatewayed them together so they can talk to each other like the 80s can talk to the 2010s, you know, through the link. We have another channel for different aspects of SignalWire for people testing it. There's like a feature request channel. There's one just for relay. So we try and kind of combine everything. You know, we like to talk to people. Feedback is like my favorite. That's where I get all my inspiration from on what to build for people.
Beautiful. Does somebody, oh, we have a question over here. Go ahead.
The answering machine detection development you were mentioning, is that for the commercial level or the free one?
What I was talking specifically about was the feature on SignalWire Cloud. It is an available feature there. It does make use of our commercial, actually both, the commercial and the free beep detection. So it uses a combination of those algorithms and other silence algorithms to do even a little bit better detection than the commercial one has available in it.
Other questions? Go ahead, right there. You're next.
With regard to WebRTC, you mentioned that there's no stable network onto it. Do you see any kind of like industry movement in particular, open source, adoption of this?
The question is whether there's industry movement towards a standard signaling protocol for WebRTC.
I think that with RIP, one of the other co-authors is Justin Uberti, and Jonathan was saying that he likes the idea of having RIP in the browser as a transport for WebRTC, so that might materialize. I'm not 100% sure, but it makes sort of sense, I guess, because it's a web browser and we're talking over HTTP, so it's pretty. You're already half the battles there. Then I think they'll probably still support some of the standards. You can do SIP. There's like 2 or 3 different SIP stacks that you can run in JavaScript to make signaling layer for WebRTC. I was laughing really hard when I first heard that, but I mean, like, it's still here. It's like, that's not the weirdest thing I've seen people make in JavaScript. And then we have, in Freeswitch, we have Verto that we invented specifically for that kind of problem, which is sort of taken at the next level. Inside of SignalWire, we have a protocol that's relay that's not just WebRTC call setup, but like everything. So we kind of took that to its compatible layer with open source Verto that you can learn how to build, remote procedure call over that same kind of interface. So I have a feeling that if the spec allows for it, that RIP might end up being just there for you as a tool. If it's a big question mark still, because it's in the first stages of RFC, and you have to convince the ITF that it's a thing, and then made into a real boy. And from there, then someone's got to implement it, and then they still could decide they don't like it. So I can't predict for sure, but if not, we've got some protocol that we invented because we're inspired by data movement, not just call setup. So we want to be able to, like, even when the call's hung up, we can do some cool stuff now. Like, you can search the conference room, like, right from the client to tell if anyone's in there or not, even though you haven't called yet. Once the call's up, you can do all these crazy data connection things where you want to control the call. Especially in a conference, there's like 100 things you can do. So we like our protocol. I don't know how RIP will work over that. If I help on this RFC, I'll probably have to make sure that I introduce the ability to send and receive commands over it, or it still won't be as useful as Verto will be.
Brilliant, James Bodie.
Well, a question from the back channel from the video audience that I've already asked many times, but for the benefit of the audience out there, can you give us the official line on international numbers, i.e. other than North American?
International numbers with SignalWire.
Yep.
Right. Though this isn't the SignalWire panel, but I feel bad. Like, KubeCon's all about not plugging your commercial entities and selling stuff to people, so I don't want to break my own rules. But international numbers, we have many people working on it. It takes a little bit engineering-wise and contractual stuff, and we have that in the very close future. Very, very soon.
We had somebody from Voxbone here. He gave a talk. That's that's their business, international numbers.
It's not very easy, you see, because the rest of the world has already figured out that you shouldn't buy phone numbers just to spam people. So you actually have to prove you live where you want to buy the phone number and those things, because it takes a little bit of paperwork and stuff in some of the locations. But
And
we'll
it
get it
varies
figured
by
out.
country. Every country has their own rules for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question in the back.
Right now, so if you're using Mod Sophia, you have to have a IPv4 profile and IPv6 profile. Have you guys ever thought about allowing candidates for IPv4 and IPv6 the same answer?
Question is IPv4 and IPv6 in the same Freeswitch profile, SIP profile?
I think you actually can do it, but you have to be a wizard at setting it up. Because it requires not only the config to be just right, but the way that your network is configured to be just right as well. So there's some changes on how you set your interface up, as well as the way you configure that stuff.
It is possible to set a v4 and a v6 address on the same profile.
When you figure it out, document it.
Yes, that would be a good blog post. Come guest blog and we'll post it on our site. Cause I bet even we would struggle to remember how, but I think we pulled it off once before, but it was too much crap. You know, because a lot of times what happens is that I still can't believe this, but I have 2 children. One of them already graduated college and one of them is like halfway through. And IPv6 was there before they were born, and it still doesn't work. So it's just, so some of the problem is you bring up that dual stack, and then like the browser sees that you support v6, so they try and use it, and they take these addresses on your computer that don't actually work, and then it tries to use that instead, and your calls all get stuck. So that's kind of one of the things that screws everything up in that respect. We love IPv6, but every time we turn it on, we end up getting pissed off and like, oh, I'll just come back next year. Maybe they'll have it working by then, because half the internet hasn't adopted it yet. So it's really crazy.
So yes, go and grab Mike Jarris afterwards with your laptop, like get it working, and then you can document it for everyone else. Other questions? Right over there, we have a question. He's asking Anthony to brag a little bit about how many calls or other metrics they can do on some particular quantum of compute.
I don't think that I've done that in a while. I used to be obsessed with doing that. After a while, I sort of got to be like so distracted by the other stuff I had to do that I haven't gone back and tried. I used to have this kind of like demo thing set up with like SIP-P. So, I'd have different tests, like how many simultaneous can I hold, and there's a big difference because it's 2 different categories. Say like, I think the most I've ever gotten are like 20,000 at once or something like that, as long as they stay all online. But if they're all hanging up, if it's the duration of every call is 5 seconds, that goes down because the SIP stack is put through hell because SIP. SIP by nature is like works against the idea of high volume traffic, which is why they want to make RIP, because they actually admit it. You know, it's like there's too much going on in SIP to be doing a trunking between 2 major carriers, because you're talking about like all these crazy rules. Every one of the calls has a dialogue, and you got to keep it in storage. And then like after you hang up, you have to keep the dialogue for 30 seconds in case that you get an errant message about that dialogue that's already gone, so that you know that it's a dialogue that is gone, so that you can tell them the right answer, and like all these crazy things that wear down on the performance. So
I'm sure they made sense at the time to somebody.
When they thought there was only going to be like 5 calls at once or something, I don't know. Like, SIP had endpoint in mind at all times. It was like peer-to-peer always breaks things. Like everyone simplifies things down to peer-to-peer. It'll be simple because A calls B, and there's nothing in the middle, and we've done it, no server. And like then they're like, wait, we need servers. And they're like, okay, now I can pretend to be one of those peers, but now put 7,000 of them at once into the same process. So that's always been kind of our challenge. So I think that, yeah, I remember hitting 20,000 before in the old days. I don't know what a VM can do, if it can still pull that off. It's a little worse than that. I think it's like 4,000 or 5,000 if you're like doing abusive, like 1 or 2 second long calls. But at some point you're putting a lot of stressor. You can like max out your network hard. UDP by nature drops packets when it gets congested. So in some of those VMs, you'll find that happens more times than you want, especially on Amazon.
Yeah.
Because they have some kind of weird virtual networking stuff, and it's been notorious about losing UDP packets in between hitting the server and the VM actually getting it. So the physical network card gets the packet, and then the VM doesn't, because the software queue is too full or something, and it just drops it all. So like that's one of the downsides in virtualization that we've run into at least. So I don't know if I'm not really trying to dodge the question, but I don't know the answer anymore. But maybe
too
we'll
many
do
variables.
it. We'll try and do that for next time, and we'll have it.
Try it yourself, report the numbers, send an email to the mailing list or get on Slack and let everyone know what you find when you benchmark it.
It's still a 4-digit number.
It's
somewhere in
big.
there. Yeah, it's big. It's usually bigger than it makes sense to ever do for segmenting traffic reasons and things like that. So after we cross the, you can only get 1,200 calls, great, this is a 100 meg, not a gig network. At a certain point, it becomes just like us trying to best ourselves, and we all kind of lost interest in.
Yeah, true story. We wasted about 4 hours trying to troubleshoot why we thought we created a bug and reduced the performance, but it's because we saturated the 100 megabit network for the first time. Back when doing that was insanely impossible, and then we're like, wait a minute, let me do some math here. Oh, we've used up all of the bandwidth in this computer.
It was a gig interface plugged into a gig switch that was forced 100 megabit. Whoops.
Those are the best bugs.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions here? Question right there. The question was support for the multi-stream Opus API?
I didn't even know about it until yesterday, but we support the 2-channel version, so maybe. I think I put some plumbing in there. That's going to cause a lot of headaches for us, I think.
Tell us about your use case. What use do you see for the multi-channel API? For conferencing, or what kind of application? Okay.
We do support 2. There's also some, I don't think it's merged, there's some support for multi-channel recording with Opus File. It's not in, and I think Nexmo decided to patent that, so there's some issues there. So everyone should, talk to them about whether that's okay for everyone to use or not.
There was another question over here. Somebody had one? They've forgotten their question. Any other questions? Anything the panelists here want to add?
I was double checking our release notes just to make sure I had plugged all the new features and I missed some. Platforms, Buster Stretch, we did drop Jesse with 110, kind of moving on to bigger but better things, plus Raspberry Pi, Raspbian. Features, the database interface is huge, including MariaDB support, and Postgres moved out of the core. Mod V8, we added a process manager so you can list your background JS scripts that are running and kill them and things like that, which was clamored for a long time. And what else did we add? Oh, and we bumped up all of our sounds and music packages are all up to date. There's a whole bunch of work of different languages, sound packages that got cleaned up and released. So, and significant work on the packaging, CentOS as well.
So what is the status of CentOS? How well supported is it?
There are working packages.
Okay.
People have been using it for a long time. We just dropped the repo before, and we got an up-to-date one out there.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what was the process of moving the database support out of the core? That must have been a big job.
It was not for me because Andre did it all. Andre, who's our release manager and all that, cranked out those patches a little bit ago, and we wanted to get it all in for this major release. So that's been in the works for 9 months almost.
And I think Andre, that was all his own personal project too.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't
He-
ask for it.
he just
said,
wanted to roll it
Hey, I
and-
did this, and since he
Yeah.
worked with us, and so we're like, okay, looks cool.
We'll run with it.
We've wanted to do that for a long time.
Same with Raspberry Pi.
And it was just never, bubbled to the top. Finally got out there, lets us get Postgres out of the core, which was always a little bit fumbly. It's nice to not have to take around extra dependencies if you don't need them.
So is there a generic database abstraction in the core then that
Yes.
then Freeswitch or PostgreSQL plugs into?
Yeah, so there's that. And we still have the ODBC hooks in the core and the SQLite hooks in the core. We didn't pull those out to separate modules just for ease of getting out the door, getting your stuff up and running if you need it. It's possible we could pull some of the ODBC stuff out at some point and pull it into a mod instead. We just didn't do it in this pass.
1.12, 1.14.
Do you talk about the new versioning scheme?
Oh, new versioning scheme. We used to do the odd even number versioning scheme for dev and release. We've switched it up to do a -devel, -dev?
Yeah, Dev.
That -dev and -release at the end to denote which one there is. So there's always confusion kind of which is forward, which was back. That should clarify that for everyone. And that's one of the big reasons that we did a 1.10, also some major new features, different platform support, and different dependencies. Are all.
On Windows too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Video works on
Video added mod AV support on Windows is in there, also on OS X, that was never in there. Yeah, lots of little pieces I forget about.
Yeah, the video actually works from the MSI that you can download that we released.
Yeah, we got those in there, and it wasn't on Mac before either. We
No, it wasn't,
just
yeah.
did that a few weeks ago as well. Finally, 7, you get to use real mod AV support in Mac.
The timer's still bad though, right? The Mac kernel isn't a really good timing source, so you have to use certain frame rates so that the math works out for the thing, because it doesn't like to work in some of them.
Didn't we fix that? Yeah, I thought we did. We fixed that a while ago.
I don't use Mac now, I use Docker.
You use Docker now? Awesome.
So do I understand correctly, 1.11 will be a non-beta release?
We haven't discussed next version numbers yet.
I see.
Right now, it's 1.10.x-dev and -release.
We might be there for a while, a little
Yeah.
longer than 1.8.
At least a year, we'll ride this one out. Maybe more, maybe 2. We'll see.
No plans for a FreeSwitch 2.0.
For the sake of semantics, I don't know, take a vote, like who'd rather have it be called that, because it's arbitrary, right? But it sounds cool, so you guys want to hear it. Freeswitch 2.0, sure. I mean,
Yeah. I will say we have seen a lot of people holding on to FreeSwitch 1.6 as if moving to 1.8 is something scary. It isn't. It's these have all been, honestly, for the last 3 years, we've been very kind of slow and incremental in how we've upgraded. The upgrade path from 1.6 through 1.10 is the same as any other minor release.
and we backported a bunch of stuff into 1.6 in anticipation while 1.8 wasn't released yet, so we would make sure it was compatible.
Yeah. So please don't hold on to 1.6. If you report a bug with 1.6, we're just going to close it immediately with a nice link to say that's not supported, try something recent. We're moving forward. Don't treat 1.10 like it's anything more than a 1.8 minor release as far as being afraid to touch it or test it. All of our stuff is very incremental because we need it to be stable too. So
I mean, I assume master is actually reasonably stable most of the time still. I mean, it used to be that almost all of us ran on master all the time.
Outside of about 3 days when we did major backporting work a couple weeks ago, it's been consistently very stable.
And we do make an effort not to break anything. The backwards compatible changes, we changed some variable names in 1.4 and 1.6. Some of them were like SIP underscore, and they were media related, so we changed them to RTP underscore. We changed the behavior of T38. In all of those, I did send emails out and announce the behavior change, that this was important. There was like 2 years ago, yeah.
Right.
And I still get bugs filed on those behavior changes.
Yeah.
And I referenced the mailing list post.
Nothing teaches stability like having to deal with change. All right, do we have other questions for the panelists? Well, then let's thank all of our panelists for being up here.
Don't forget to, you want to keep up to date with us. We like to broadcast stuff on social media now, since that's the easiest way to do it. So pick your favorite one and follow us on it, and that's how you figure out what's going on with us.
Follow them on social media. Follow the Freeswitch team, follow SignalWire. Once again, we have Brian, Mike, Anthony, Giovanni, and Chris. Big thanks to them for being up here. Big thanks for them for putting this together and for answering all of your questions. Once again, big round of applause. Standing ovation for the Freeswitch team. Come on, they deserve a standing ovation.